This is Joe. Welcome back to the channel. Well, back in May of this year, we had a workshop with Jerry McKelly. She is an artist and zine maker, and she held a workshop with our typewriter group on using typewriters along with other artistic materials and artistic techniques to make little pocket-sized zines. And if you're not familiar what a zine is, well, zine is short for magazine, but the zine making movement is like a self-published movement. You can make your own documents, your own periodicals, your own magazines, your own pamphlets, booklets, comic books, whatever the genre is. You can make them yourself. You can copy them. We're using like Xerox copy technology is a common way they've been done. And there are a lot. There's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of zine makers around the world. There are zine conventions even. So zine making, self-publishing, your own little periodical, your own little artistic work put into a little booklet or pamphlet or handout is a really fun thing to do. And after I took the workshop with Jerry, I started thinking about what kind of a story or what kind of a zine could I do? And I started thinking about, well, of course, zines can be, they don't have to be fictional stories. You can have documentary stuff, periodicals, more like news or current events or whatever you want to do. I was thinking of a little story, and it was going to be typewriter related. And so I started working on the idea of a zine, typewriter related story that I could make these pocket-sized zines and include them in letters that I mail, typewritten letters. I have a lot of correspondence in the United States and around the world. And what I'd like to show you today are two different techniques for making these little zines, story kind of a zines, from a single letter-sized sheet of paper, so you can have these little pocket-sized zines. Stay tuned. Okay, so the style of zine that Jerry showed us how to make, it has 8 internal panels or pages plus a front and back cover. And the way we make these, I'm going to very quickly fold it. There's a lengthwise fold. And then there is a series of 3 folds. So you fold that in half, and then you fold down one way, and the other side, fold it down the same way like that. Again, I'm doing this very quickly. You might have pages like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this will be 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then your front and back covers will be here. And then to do the actual fold, you're going to cut 3/4 of the way along this. You're going to cut it here like this, and then you fold it up like that, over like that. Then you'll have pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you'll have a front cover and a back cover like that. So that's the style of zine that Jerry showed us how to make. And then what I like to do is I will use a glue stick and glue this side together, and then I will glue these 2 back pages together and these 2 together, so that you then have a zine that opens up like a regular pamphlet, and it has 4 spreads: page 1 and 2, page 3 and 4, page 5 and 6, page 7 and 8, plus front and back cover. That's the style of zine we're making. So I wanted to make a zine about typewriters and using typewriters, and the story that I thought of was a guy that decides to go out to a coffee shop. And this first zine, I'm using this kind of black and white ink technique. So the first tool that I'm using is this Pentel brush pen. So these look somewhat like a fountain pen. The tip is a synthetic fabric tip that is very flexible like a brush, and it uses ink cartridges. These are FP10 Pentel ink cartridges that are filled with black ink, and they are very similar to fountain pen cartridges, and you can buy refill cartridges very easily. So here is some test sketching that I was doing. So if you use the tip of it very lightly against the paper, and this takes a lot of control on the part of your hand as far as not pressing too hard, but you can get this very fine kind of crosshatch shading technique, very thin lines like that. But if you press harder, you can get a very wide line depending on how hard you press. That whole brush, the whole side of the brush will deliver ink flow based on how hard or soft you press on it. So there's a lot of expression that you can get out of these brush pens, but they take quite a bit of practice and talent to do well, and I'm not really that good at it. But that was one of the prime tools that I used for this zine. Another tool was one of these Staples Duramark Ultra Fine Point permanent markers. This is basically Staples' house brand version of a Sharpie marker, and these come in pretty handy. Although the line weight remains the same, you don't have that expressive thin and thick brush-like line weight that you do with the Pentel pen. Then I was also using the black fine ballpoint pen of this Jetstream 4-in-1 pen. So that was another black and white line effect that I was using in this project. And I was also using some pencil for some shading and a little bit of lighter gray look to it. And also, I used one of these Presto correction pens that has a fine, like a whiteout type of a tip for putting white down to cover up some of the black ink marks if you want to control your artwork a little bit better. So this is the first story I come up with, and again, it was about a guy that wants to go to a coffee shop and type. So panel 1, so you're feeling uninspired, words aren't flowing. So he has these thought balloons. And I was doing this kind of dark background style with the brush pen, kind of this moody, dark appearance, a little bit of crosshatch shading. Oh yeah, and I laid out these panels initially in a mechanical pencil, just divided them up like that. I hand lettered the letters with the brush pen, and then I went back with my ultrafine tip marker and corrected them when they got a little sloppy, because I'm not super talented with the brush pen. Also, you might want to notice, like here, I'm using this kind of Charlie Brown style hair lines for hair, and I'm actually using the white ink to kind of show those same lines going above his head in the dark shadows behind it. So it's kind of an interesting technique. Also, the thought balloon, I had to kind of clean up the line with the whiteout pen. So that's kind of one thing you can do with this, with a master. You can kind of correct if you got too much ink in one area, you can use the whiteout pen. Here's a little shading I did with the pencil to kind of make a little bit better shading. So I did the story. He wants to go to the coffee shop. He drives to the coffee shop, and we flip it around for page 5, page 5. And then he's at the coffee shop waiting in line. He's really tapping away, typing. Around the thought balloon here, I did some cross-hatch shading with the permanent marker, and then I used the pencil lines here as a lighter kind of a background shading. I was trying to achieve this kind of like out of focus background, like a diffused, not super detailed background of a coffee shop, and a little bit of that same style of kind of that rough ink work style that was popularized back in the 1960s in the alternative comic book era. And then he's sitting at the chair typing, a little bit of shading underneath here, some cross-hatch shading around the thought balloon, and then it's later at night, he's finally leaving, and you notice my street light kind of thing is actually the whiteout pen. I'm doing that over the background, the dark background. And then finally, he can't sleep at night, but he blames it on the typewriter. So that was just a silly, silly little story. Not only do I need the 8 pages for the story, but I need a front and back cover. And as you can see when I turn this around, the permanent markers, they do bleed through this art paper. So I decided to do a separate front and back page, on a separate page. For the front and back page here, I used permanent marker, colored markers. The gray or silver was a metallic marker, different colors. So instead of having my master artwork on double-sided on one sheet of paper, it's actually on two separate sheets of paper. And the way this lines up is this is page 1 and this is page 8 of the zine itself. And on the other side of page 1 and 8 will be your front and back cover. So they were just two separate sheets. And when I brought them to the coffee store, I said I need them kept in this alignment. Don't flip them around. Keep them in this alignment and copy them and print them double-sided. And I did that. So first of all, I like the dark, glossy shadow, the way the ink lines came out. I like the way the pencil marks have that more of a lighter gray shading, which is kind of what I was looking for, right? It kind of looks nice. It's not quite so dense. But the big problem was they printed, the one print shop that did this, they printed it, but their machine can't print all the way to the edge of the paper. So what I needed for them to do was, when they made the printing, was to go to 95% size. And then it would have had, they would have had a white border, but the entire artwork would have been there. So you can see like my signature is cut off there. And on the back side, the same way, the signature is slightly cut off. So I had some of these printed from this print shop. I went ahead and folded and put them together as a finished zine, as you can see there. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. But I was a little bit unhappy with the way these borders are and the way it cut off some of my artwork. And I decided I wanted to make a second version of this with a different style of art. So this style of art was totally different. This is collage art. And for this particular project, each of these panels is a separate piece of colored cardstock that I did each one separately. I cut these out to the same size that each would have been in the folded layout. So I'm using colored pieces of paper. Like the thought balloon is obviously drawn with the Pentel brush pen, but then I cut it out with scissors, glued each individual piece to the background. And for the background, I went to a craft store and got some of these 4x6, or actually 4.5 by 6.5. These are cardstock pieces with different backgrounds of art, different colored printed backgrounds. These are actually designed to be, they have an adhesive backing, some of these, you can peel it off, but I use that as the background for these. Using regular construction paper. For the character's face, I'm using newsprint paper. I didn't want the bright, glowing white look, but so kind of an off-white appearance. And then his body is just this paisley or whatever print that is another one of these prints from this book here. I just cut it out, and using a glue stick, is my favorite glue stick, I just glued all the pieces together. And so it's the same basic story. I typed the letters with a typewriter, and I decided to use the red color, so I just can't think of anything to write. He sees his typewriter, a very stylized typewriter, by the way, not technically accurate. How about a coffee shop? So he has this coffee cup, coffee mug he's thinking about. And again, get out of my way, honk, honk. He's driving to the coffee shop very impatiently. And for the background, I chose this kind of black and white checkered look that kind of might resemble buildings. And then page 5, he's standing in line waiting for his coffee. I used the whiteout pen to make these kind of streaks on the window to look like reflected light on the window. And I had to find different colors of the same paper stuff here to make the coffee shop like wallpaper and kind of different furnishings. So then he's sitting there at the table, tapping away, tap, 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 and he's thinking, I hope this typing doesn't bother anyone. And then it's at night. Now, he's been at the coffee shop for hours, and you can see there's a moon in the window, and you can see the light reflected, and the 13th cup, I got some writing done, and his eyes are all blurry-eyed from all these. See, I did each of these coffee cups in green construction paper and then glued each one on anyway, it was kind of silly. And then finally, he's in bed at night and he can't sleep. His eyes are still blurry from all the caffeine. Can't sleep. Must be that typewriter. Got to blame the typewriter. And I found somewhere, oh yeah, one of these decorative papers has this little spoon and fork kind of design, and I used that. I made it into a picture, and then this purplish whatever was his wallpaper in his home. And anyways, and I have a little cat under the bed. So that was the story, the second version of basically the same storyline. I ended up using a glue stick and gluing it to a heavy piece of cardstock. So that's my master. And I chose to use the same title page as that first black and white story. And that's kind of the nice thing about using a separate page for the title, is you can reuse the title, or I could choose to do a different style front and back cover, and maybe collage style or whatever, and then I could reprint these with a different title or different front and back cover. So speaking of printing, let's go to how that went. I went to a different copy store for this print. What I asked them to do was to print it at 95% full scale. So now we have, yes, we have a border around it, but it's the complete artwork. It's not cut off. And you also have the complete artwork on the back side for the title, for the front and back cover. So when I got these prints back home, I set them down and took each sheet and carefully trimmed off the excess border using my guillotine cutter. So I did it in kind of a batch format. I did all the cuttings. And then when I was done cutting them, I started doing all the folds. And the way this works is the middle fold in the middle of the artwork has to be a mountain fold. So you want to fold it like that. And then these two folds would be valley folds, so that you'll have the front and back cover showing on one side. So here is the maquette, the mock-up, one of those sheets. So you can see that I have trimmed all the borders off. Then I have folded the mountain fold and then the two valley folds. And then I set it down and I use a straight edge and a razor knife, and I slice 3/4 of the way across lengthwise from page 1 and 8 up to page 3 and 6. And then you fold the two sides together accordion style, like that, and then you fold it in half and crease this like that. And then you use a bone folder, one of these bone folder tools, to crease all the corners nice and sharp. And then finally what I do is I will glue, using a glue stick, I'm going to glue this page to there, and then the back side, I'm going to glue this page together and this page together. And the result is I have 33 of these little booklets now. Coffee shop typing. I just can't think of anything to write. He looks at his typewriter. How about a coffee shop? Get out of my way, honk, honk, honk. Getting heavy, order here. He's at the coffee shop. I hope this typing doesn't bother anybody. Tap, 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 tap. The 13th cup. I got some writing done. He's all wired on caffeine, and finally, can't sleep. Must be that typewriter. Well, this was a fun project for me. This was like breaking new ground in not only using like two different styles of artwork for the same story, but learning the proper way to use copy machines to get the right size, to get your story printed properly on color paper. The whole thing has been a lot of fun, and it just opens up a lot of new avenues of creativity for me. I hope to be able to do more stories in the future, more little zines, and I'll be having these as inserts in my letters that I write people. So that'll be fun. So I have a pretty healthy correspondence with people from not only the United States but around the world, typewritten correspondence from the website TypePals. And if you're interested in being a typewriter correspondent with myself and other typewriter people, be sure to sign up to TypePals. Go to typepals.com. Register, put your postal address in there, and then you'll gain access to other people's postal addresses. You can write them letters. So this is going to be a fun project going forward, having these available, putting them in people's letters, and then I get to think of new zine ideas. So it's not just like cartoon zines like what this one was, but I could be doing instructional zines, informational zines, how to conduct a type-in, like a little zine on what are all the things you need to do to make a type-in happen. Think about all the different ways you could have your own magazine. It's not just fiction or stuff like that. It can be informational, right? Factual, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a whole wide world of things you can do with zines. You don't have to dabble in art, in graphics like that. You can just typewrite things. You can use simple line art, simple sketches, drawings, pen and pencil, whatever you want to do. The world is your oyster when it comes to making zines. There's no rules even. I'd love to hear from you, though. Down below, leave a comment. Are you an artist? Have you done zines? Do you do illustrations? Do you do collage art? I'd love to hear from you, because I'm not really an artist. I'm just a dabbler. But I would love to hear from you guys if you do any of this. Please, let's have a dialogue about it. And until next time, obviously, I'm going to say the same closing that I always do, but it means a lot. Yes, stay creative and have yourselves a great day. Bye-bye for now.